Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live as every Wednesday. I'm Andrea Gomez, and hello, Orlando
Good
Sánchez.
morning, how are you?
Muy bien, muy bien.
Qué
¿Cómo has
bueno.
estado?
Yo bien,
Bien? ¿Todo
gracias.
bien?
Todo perfecto.
Well, we have a very exciting show, and we have a special guest today here in the studio. And Orlando, you're going to introduce her properly. And she's been a friend of the Texas Latino Conservatives. And we had her before in the show when she was running for a position in the district attorney. But also she's doing a fantastic job in the Houston Police Officers Union.
Correct.
She is the attorney there.
Yeah, so we're going to quit referring to her as she. We'll introduce her in a second, but let me set up the show. Good morning, everybody. We want to talk and begin a conversation, somewhat of a long conversation about criminal justice and what's happening not only in Harris County, but other counties, major cities around the United States. I know that the mainstream media's narrative is that crime has spiked in this country because of the pandemic. I disagree. I think it's because a movement that started long time ago, which was called criminal justice reform and how to introduce social justice into the criminal justice system in the United States. I don't think we disagree with that goal. There have been some abuses. There have been some folks that have lingered in incarceration in local county jails for some time, and it tends to affect, in my opinion, low-income folks, racial minorities. I agree with all that. Remember that I spent several years in the criminal justice system as a Harris County probation officer, supervising on a weekly basis more than 200 felons and misdemeanors for 4 courts in Harris County, both the misdemeanor courts and the felony courts in Harris County. So while I'm not an attorney, I have some cursory experience in the criminal justice system. Now, the MacArthur Foundation, based in Chicago, Illinois, has been behind this movement. And it started in Harris County, for example, some time ago before the sweep, before the Democrats took office. And we'll develop that theme a little bit. But the MacArthur Foundation invests millions of dollars in criminal justice reform, and among those reforms is bail bond reform. And they are joined by other more left-leaning organizations like the Soros Foundation and several other foundations in the United States. Having said all that, I think it's important that people aren't held in jail for long periods of time that, are low-level crimes. That I think we all agree with, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There is a narrative in Harris County and in Houston, I don't know about other cities, that in Harris County there was a lawsuit filed with respect to the bail bond system. By the way, I spent 12 years as a member of the bail bond board in Harris County. That the bail bond system in Harris County is unconstitutional. Nothing could be further from the truth. The bail bond system in Harris County has not been declared unconstitutional. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a few minutes. Now, the bail bond system, I like to refer to it a little bit as kind of like buying a home, right? When you go buy a house, the bank, the mortgage company, is going to require that you put some skin in the game. That is, that you have to have a down payment. So that if you walk away from your commitment to the mortgage company, you're out of a lot of money. And so is the bail bond system. When you're accused of a crime, you're allowed to go free, provided the judge reviews your case and your criminal background and sets a bond. And that bond may be $10,000, or if it's a heinous, violent crime and you're not a flight risk, he may set it at, or she may set it at $1 million. In either case, most people don't have $1 million or $10,000 laying around, so they use a bail bondsman in Harris County. And the bail bondsman puts up a substantial amount of money, but the defendant or their associates or family put up a down payment. And this is all to ensure the public, you the taxpayers, that the defendant will show up to be adjudicated in the criminal justice system. And what's happened in Harris County is we've sort of thrown that out. And now defendants are given personal recognizance bonds regardless of their criminal background, and they're out usually before the police officer that arrests them finishes their shift. And so a police officer may arrest a defendant and they're out in less than 4 hours. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But one of the issues that's developed in Harris County, for example, is burglary of a motor vehicle. That is considered a nonviolent crime. Somebody walks by, sees a purse or a laptop in the backseat of your automobile, smashes the window, grabs the items, and then takes off. Unfortunately, and this is where the left gets it wrong, because they're all about gun violence, right? Those guns that go off and commit murders all over the country. They're stealing guns. I understand from Houston Police Department that over 2,800 guns were stolen last year. Now, those guns are sold into the black market, and guess who buys them? Thugs, gang members, and criminals. If you have a felony conviction in Texas, you are not allowed to own a gun. So if you want to commit a crime and you need a gun, where do you buy it? In the black market. You buy it from someone that has committed burglary of a motor vehicle and has stolen your gun. Now, what happens is when these folks are arrested because the alleged crime is nonviolent, they don't see a judge. Their criminal background isn't reviewed. They go to a magistrate, and this magistrate automatically hands them a personal recognizance, $100, paid for by taxpayers, get out of jail free, and in less than 4 hours, they're back on the streets committing mayhem. So I'm setting up the show because I think that's a huge contributing factor to the out-of-control crime that we're seeing in Harris County. And so today our guest is our friend, Mary Nan Huffman. The only demerit for Mary Nan is that she is a Sooner. But a graduate of St. Mary's Law School here in Texas. She is a 10-year veteran of prosecuting district attorney offices, mostly in Montgomery County, but I think has worked in Tarrant County before. She's a native of Denton, Texas, and we're delighted that she's our guest today to talk a little bit about this alleged criminal justice reform, what's going on in Harris County. So, Mary Nan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you back.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, by the way, my opening monologue was a little long, but I wanted to set it up. Andrea's used to this. But what, if anything, of my diatribe did I say that you agree or disagree with?
Well, I think that one very important thing is that, there isn't just a blanket rule for any crime. And justice is individualized. And so you want to look at the person, you want to look at the crime, and the judge should take those factors into consideration in order to keep the public safe.
And when you say look at the person, you're talking about the defendant that allegedly is supposed to go before an elected judge. In this case, let's focus on the misdemeanor courts of Harris County. A defendant should go before a judge, but they don't, right? They generally go before a magistrate. Is that true?
Yes, that's true a lot of the times.
Okay. And so the magistrates are handing out PR bonds like cotton candy, right?
Yes.
And are they reviewing the criminal background of the individual? Are they even wondering what was stolen? By the way, did you steal a gun?
Well, I think that's the problem. It's not being individualized. They're looking at the crime and they're just saying, hey, here's your get out of jail free card.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what I said. Is the Harris County bail bond system been declared unconstitutional by the federal courts of the Southern District of the United States?
Absolutely not. We had misdemeanor bail reform happen because, of course, we don't want to keep people in jail just because they're poor. However, it's a balancing act. You have to take the public safety into consideration along with the defendant's rights.
And that's the role of the elected judges, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so there's a difference between the misdemeanor courts and the felony courts. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that depends on the scale of the crime, right? Based on the penal code. So the heinous, violent, crimes, burglary of a motor vehicle is considered a misdemeanor, low-level crime. Shoplifting is considered, public intoxication, getting in a bar fight. They're all considered misdemeanors, right? They don't really pose a threat to the society at large. But murder or aggravated robbery with a gun or a machete or what, those are considered serious crimes and those are felonies, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so what has happened in Harris County, in my recollection, is that when the Democrats took office in 2018, there was a massive reform of the bail bond system, correct? And there was a simultaneous lawsuit in the federal courts, right? And we agreed to some of the reforms to keep the poor out of the jail system while they were awaiting trial. But there was a whole list of other things that the courts at Harris County, and it was approved by the Commissioner's Court, agreed to do, correct? And part of it is start handing out these personal recognizance bonds. And so has that been abused? In other words, the question now is, have the felony courts now started handing out personal recognizance bonds for major crimes?
Right, and I think what a lot of people don't know is that there actually hasn't been any official felony bail reform in Harris County like we've seen in some places like Chicago and New York. I mean, in New York, there could be a dead body and you get a PR bond, and that has been something that has gone on through the legislature. But in Harris County, felony bail reform hasn't happened. But what has happened is they took this misdemeanor bail reform and just kind of translated it into felony bail reform.
So it's a blanket approach now in Harris County in the criminal court system.
Yes.
There are judges that just, as a matter of personal philosophy, which shouldn't be brought into the situation because they need to follow the penal code and the Texas bail bond. We have a code that dictates the bail bond system. It's in the occupations code, right, of the state of Texas. And then Harris County has local rules with respect to bail bond. That should be followed by the judges, which it isn't. And that's what's creating the problem in Harris County. It's not the pandemic. It is the fact that we're not holding these defendants accountable, and you and I, the taxpayers, the law-abiding citizens, are the ones suffering. Now, Andrea, you've seen this spike in crime in the city. And you know what's sad is when you look at murders and felonies, they disproportionately affect communities of color.
We've been seeing the spike in crime. I mean, everybody has been feeling it, and every day we're seeing on the news that it's murders, homicides, and robber, and many, many, many things. But something that we were talking off the air with Marianne, is that she was telling us that the problem is not only that the spike on the crime, but also a lot of police officers are retiring, and many people or nobody wants to become a police officer. So it's you have the crime rate up and the police officers going down.
And I don't know what the percentage is for this year, but last year our police applications nationwide were down 67%. And we need people to do that job. I mean, I don't want to do it, but I'm glad that there are people that do. But with the climate that we're seeing right now, who wants to do that job?
And I don't know if when I was introducing you, Mary Ann, if I said that you represent the Houston Police Officers Union, right?
Yes.
And so you do work directly with police officers that serve the great city of Houston. But one of the things I've noticed is the dearth of police officers. I can't remember the last time I saw a squad car in the city of Houston. I mean, we're not working radar anymore. You call and it takes hours. And it's not the police department's fault and the police officers' fault. It's just that they're woefully understaffed. And, the current administration in the city of Houston is fine with it. They're not making an effort. God knows they have budgetary problems, so they're not hiring police officers. Is the academy still going on?
It is, but our numbers are low. We're graduating academy classes early to get officers out on the street because we don't have enough.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem. And something that you mentioned that it got my attention is like when I was asking you, so after you didn't win the election, you keep working in the union, but you said, and I'm not planning to run for office because I am I want to defend and not defund the police. I want to save Harris County. This is what is going on is unbelievable, and we don't feel safe anymore. And we've been seeing every single day people are going to restaurants because now the economy is open. People are desperate to go to restaurants, and we've been seeing every day people going to restaurants are getting followed to their house and get robbed, get murdered, and it's unbelievable. And we're talking about nice and good and fancy areas.
And we have, some of the greatest police officers in the country. We really do. But they could be so much more efficient if they didn't have to arrest the same bad guys over and over again.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to the MacArthur Foundation because they've been very instrumental in this reform, criminal justice reform, and bringing some kind of social justice to the criminal justice system in America. So I'm going to ask Mark to put up a part of what the MacArthur Foundation has on their website. And this is their approach, and I'm just going to let you guys read, and I'll read along. The MacArthur Foundation says, through the Safety and Justice Challenge, we're investing in local reform, research, experimentation, and communications to create national demand for local justice reforms that will safely reduce jail populations and eliminate racial and ethnic disparities. And, folks, the experimentation has failed. It's time that the taxpayers speak up, and it's time that elected officials realize that this experiment has gone off the rails. Now, we're all for making sure that everyone is treated equally in the criminal justice system, regardless of your ethnicity or your race. I think we all demand that. And that's a laudable goal. But this experimentation has gone off the tracks. When you have these repeat offenders getting out on personal recognizance bonds, and they are given by the felony courts of Harris County and magistrates in the misdemeanor courts of Harris County, and these individuals are going back out and doing exactly what Andrea just talked about. They're stalking you when you go to a restaurant. They know that you live in an either affluent area or drive a nice car or maybe wearing a nice watch, and they hit you up when you go home. You see it on the news every night in Harris County. There is a reason for that. It is not the pandemic. It is an utter failure of the criminal justice system and your elected judges. You elected these judges in 2018 in Harris County, and their focus, unfortunately, was not to protect you and to interpret the penal code of the state of Texas and to impose the penalties on the defendants that are called upon by the people of the state of Texas, which is the penal code. They've decided to go rogue and do their own thing. And there are massive consequences. Mary Nan's talking about this. I mean, this has discouraged not only prosecutors, it has discouraged police officers, and that's why we're seeing the demoralization of law enforcement in this country, right? I mean, you work with police officers every day.
Absolutely. And I think it's shocking that they call it social justice, because it's not justice. It is not justice. I mean, innocent people are getting hurt.
Yeah. I go back to, I watched years ago, history tends to repeat itself, you guys. And then in the 1990s, Andrea, I don't even know if you were living in the United States, but the Democrats in Texas, and I don't want to make this too partisan.
I got here in 1997, but I was in Laredo, Texas.
Okay. I don't want to be too partisan, but there are consequences to the results from elections. In the 1990s, when Texas was ruled by Democrats, both at the governor's office, the lieutenant governor with Bullock, and the Democrats in the House and the Senate, they did not invest, as the population in Texas grew, they did not invest in prisons. So we had a lack of prison capacity. And the result was that the parole system was giving credit, and I'm just going to give an example, that if a judge said you were sentenced to 10 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, Texas gave you 1 year credit for 1 month served. So the judge gave you 10 years, but the parole system paroled you in 1 year.
Wow.
And what was happening was those parolees were coming to Harris County, Dallas County, and other counties, and the crime spiked. A couple of examples. Everybody knows the story of Tracy G. We have a center called the Tracy G Center. A young lady, 18 years old, working at Greenway Plaza, got off of work at midnight, and some thugs at the intersection of Braeswood and 610 shot her in the head, dragged her out of her car, ran her over, stole her car. And then there was Ertman and Pena, the two young ladies walking down T.C. Jester, who were gang raped Remember that case? By gangs that were all felons and undocumented aliens on parole. And so what happened was that the people of Harris County voted out all the Democrats, and then we brought in the conservatives that were committed to criminal justice, and we began to build more capacity. Crime went way down. We had murder rates in Houston that were as low as a couple hundred. Now we're up to what? Coming up to 600, 800 a year? I mean, it's out of control, folks, and so there are consequences to elections.
And it shouldn't be, like you said, it shouldn't be a Republican or Democrat issue. It shouldn't be red or blue. This is about public safety.
Correct.
And no matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, we all deserve to live in a safe place.
Well, that's right. I mean, when you call 911 and ask for a police officer, the dispatcher's not going to say, by the way, we're looking at your voting record and you voted conservative, you voted liberal. No. You know, they respond.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, you know, I've lived in Houston now for 15 years and I've had 2 different houses broken into 3 different times. And not once did they ask me who I voted for before they robbed me.
Right.
I mean
both
that's true.
Democrats and Republicans, we all want public safety. And again, let's go back because I've got to be fair. I was watching I think it was a 60 Minutes, and you remember too, because back in the 90s, crime spiked, and there was an attorney that was representing an athlete, I think at the University of Alabama. And the conservatives have gone a little bit overboard with the 3 strikes and you're out. Remember, if you committed 3 crimes in a county, there were communities that would say, you're done.
Right.
We're going to put you in prison and throw away the key. And an attorney for a young athlete who had been arrested 3 times for minor possession of controlled substances said, you know, and I'll never forget this, in Alabama, it's better to be rich and guilty than poor and innocent. And that always stuck with me. And that's true because that shows an injustice in the criminal justice system. So we're all for social justice and that everybody be treated fairly. But what has happened, Mary Nan, is this has gotten out of control.
absolutely.
Okay. And so...
Mary Nan, back in the time that you were in the show for the first time, you were talking about, because you were running for office, and you were saying one of the reasons that I'm running for office is because what is going on in the district attorney, we're being seen people and criminals saying that they want to commit the crime in Harris County because the system is so light with them.
Right.
And you were talking about a woman that sell her daughter and put her in a bus. And I want you to talk about that story again because it's sticking in my head. So how come a mother can sell her daughter and she rather to sell it in Harris County than in another county because here, you know, it was not going to be justice.
And before she answers that, let me just say that I think I didn't read this in the bio, that you have tremendous experience in child sex crimes and internet sex crimes and
child trafficking. That was my specialty.
Okay, so this is a person that has spent more than a decade focusing on these sort of crimes. So go ahead.
And I'm still in it right now. I'm actually special prosecuting in Madisonville next week.
Are you?
On a jury trial.
Madison County.
Yes.
Okay, we have friends up there.
Oh, good.
But go ahead, answer her question about the child being sold by the mother.
Well, one of the last cases I worked on at the DA's office in Montgomery County, we had a mom who was going to put her 2-year-old daughter on a Greyhound bus from Houston to Conroe and sell her for $1,200 for a couple of hours of sex. And so we had, you know, kind of a sting operation set up, the Homeland Security, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. We were all working together. And so we had surveillance at the Greyhound station in downtown Houston and surveillance up in Conroe. And so we see him walking around the bus station and she sends a text message and says, hey, you think we should just stay in Harris County? Because that DA up there, he doesn't like people like us. You know, and for me, that was an eye-opening moment because it wasn't the crime that bothered her. It was the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
You know, and so I went back to the DA's office and I started talking to some of these other prosecutors. I said, can you believe what this mom said? They know.
Yeah.
They know where to commit crimes. And one of the other assistants said, I had a guy the other day who told a police officer, look, I'll come sell you black tar heroin, but I ain't crossing that county line. We're doing this deal in Harris County.
Oh, my God.
And now, as an attorney for the Houston Police Officers Union, I go out on a lot of scenes. And what I have seen are people that are on multiple felony bonds or multiple PR bonds for violent offenses committing more crimes. And the police officers are out there, they're like, well, we caught him again, but nobody's going to do anything about it. And
they know.
We're not giving criminals enough credit. They know where to commit crimes. And right now,
Yeah.
Harris County is
They know that
haven.
nothing's going to happen to them.
That's a great line, because I was just about to say, career criminals, and there are out there, right?
Yes.
Am I right or wrong?
Yes.
Yeah.
Career criminals, it's an industry for them. Just like you folks that invest in the stock market, you're always watching the ticker to see what the Dow Jones Industrial Average is doing and the S&P 500, right? Or you're watching, if you're trading oil, and you're watching what the barrel of oil price is. Criminals are watching what counties are tough and hard on crime and which counties are soft on crime. And the counties where they're soft on crime, guess where the criminals go?
Harris County.
They come shopping to Harris County.
They do. I was on a scene not that long ago, and the officers, they have the suspects in custody, and the suspect said, oh, where are we headed? Are we going downtown, And the officer said, oh, sorry, boys, y'all are 500 feet inside Fort Bend County. And they said, dang it, because they knew.
We're
Oh
busted.
my God, that's so sad.
Well, if Fort Bend County and Montgomery County, surrounding counties, still have a pretty tough prosecutorial system. They abide by the penal code of the state of Texas, and they do impose, a bond on these criminal defendants, whereas everybody knows, if you want to make some quick money, come to Harris County, because there's a lot of, folks with money down there, and there's no consequences for the crime. I mean, it's just horrible. And I got to tell you guys, I think it's going to be the moms, the parents, that revived this call that enough is enough. Because I remember when drunk driving was out of control in Texas, there was an organization called MAD that made a huge difference in the state of Texas. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers.
Yes.
And in the 1990s, under Ann Richards and the Democrats, being in charge of the state of Texas, there was an organization in Harris County, and I don't even know if they're still here, Mary Nan. They were called Parents of Murdered Children.
They are still here.
They're still active.
Yes.
And it was those folks that finally stood up, taxpayers, non-elected officials, because the elected officials wouldn't do their jobs. And it was the parents and the taxpayers and the law-abiding citizens of the state of Texas that demanded reform. And that's what's going to happen in Texas and Harris County again, is that the taxpayers need to stand up and throw out these judges that are not abiding by the penal code and the laws passed by the legislature, which, by the way, in a democratic system, the laws of the state of Texas, meaning the penal code, are our laws. These are the laws passed by the people. That means we want them enforced. That doesn't mean we want you, judges, to turn criminals loose so they can come back and reoffend. And so I think it's going to be the grassroots effort that's going to get reform back in Harris County.
I hope so. But, the problem is with Harris County, there's 4.7 million people. Harris County's bigger than 27 states. I mean, just the sheer size of it. There's a lot of education that needs to be out there. And I was talking with Andrea about, we have the second longest ballot in the country, and we have things on the ballot like the district attorney, the county attorney, the district clerk, the county clerk. They all sound the same.
County treasurer.
Right. They all sound the same, right? And so people know that crime is bad. They know they don't like it, but they don't actually know who's responsible for it, and we need that education piece out there.
Well, that's right. And so, my comment is just vote for conservatives. But, no, really, and that's why we do these programs, is to educate you folks about what's going on. So, no, it's not the pandemic. No, there's not a spike in crime because humanity all of a sudden decided to turn criminal. There's always been a criminal element. That's why we have a penal code. That's why the people pass it, and we want the judges to enforce it. And so there are consequences, and there are great publications out there that'll help you when it comes to election time. The League of Women Voters, a nonprofit organization, publishes information about these judges. But it is hard. You're absolutely right. And I've got to say, as a candidate that's been on the ballot, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. And sometimes I don't know the judicial philosophy of these lawyers and that run for office. So how do we improve that system? How do we educate the public as to what judge you need to vote for?
Well, I think that, we all need to, we all have our own network of people and our own friends and our own families. And so, like you said, the League of Women Voters, make your own piece of paper and email it out to your friends, because we're going to reach new people that way. I mean, only the people that know to search the League of Women Voters would go and find that list.
But I mean, I think Andrea would agree with me. We talk about the League of Women Voters. We talk about going to pachyderm clubs and listening to the candidates. But you go to the barrio and to the hood, people don't have time for that.
People don't
People
have
are
time
working
for that.
two jobs. I
Yeah.
mean, so how do we educate the community, Mary Nan?
And
You know,
unfortunately, the media, it doesn't help.
yeah, the media doesn't
Because
cover
the
that.
media, I mean, they're really good putting all the crimes every day, because every day, if you watch the news, it's like the crime of the day. That's the headline, and that's from the beginning till the end. But they just lost track with education. They don't want to educate the community. They only want to put the crime of the day.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's so much that people can do, and organizations like us, we can do, but I don't know how to really get into the barrio, as you said, and get into the Hispanic community, because, this show is in English, but we need also more education in Spanish.
And the African American community, as I said at the top of the show, the crime victims in Harris County are disproportionately minority. And Mary Nan just said that it's interesting that we have this social justice reform, but the consequence is that there has been a huge spike in crimes committed against people of color and the poor.
That's not justice.
That's not justice. So, yeah.
And what is worrying me a lot, not only seeing what is going on around the country with this defund the police, but, let's go local, because that's here is where we live. It worries me a lot that it's less and less and less police officers, and we don't feel safe. And it doesn't matter if you put an alarm system in your house, if you put a surveillance system in your house or in your business or whatever, it doesn't matter when they don't care. They don't care. It's a lot of technology these days, and they're being catch in camera, in video, and we're seeing on the news, because it's like, oh, here is the surveillance. They don't even care to cover their face.
Well, because criminals know if I break into a house, I have about 30 seconds until the alarm actually goes off.
Yeah.
Then the alarm company is going to call a couple of times to make sure it's not a false alarm. Then when they don't get a hold of the homeowner, or they get a hold of the homeowner, then they dispatch the police. But we don't have enough of them.
But we don't have police. I mean, like, enough.
Right,
Yeah, so
we
they
don't
show
have
up
enough.
3
We
hours
don't.
later to write a report.
Right.
Yeah. And if they apprehend them, there's no consequence because they're put out on a PR bond. It's a
And they know
nonviolent
that.
crime.
And people keep saying defund the police, and now I love what you said. We want to defend the police.
I want to defend the police. I
Yeah,
do.
and it's more sad that nobody wants to be a police these days, because I mean, who wants to do that job when nobody wants to respect them, and and they're putting their life on risk.
Yeah. Mary Nan, let me get a little philosophical now, because let me sort of argue the other side. Historically, and I grew up, I was born in the 50s. I grew up in Texas in the South in the 60s throughout the entire civil rights struggle. In the South, the police were historically used to enforce, racist laws. Meaning, when an African American in Alabama or Mississippi tried to go to the tax assessor collector to register to vote, they were barred from the county courthouse. And when they tried to enter as U.S. citizens covered under the Constitution, they were arrested and beaten by police officers. So do you understand the disconnect and why we're all wrapped around the axle about social justice?
Absolutely. And I think that, policing has come a long way since then.
Exactly.
Especially with HPD. I mean, the training that these officers get, the racial profiling cards they have to fill out every single traffic stop they go to make sure that, they're not targeting, one specific class of people. There are a lot more measures in place. The sad thing is that, there's good people and bad people in every profession. There's good teachers and bad teachers, and good priests and bad priests, and good police officers and bad police officers. And in my experience, there have been so many more good police officers than bad ones. But the one bad one, when we see things like the George Floyd case, and,
Absolutely.
it hurts
Yep.
all police officers.
And so, look, it's not an easy issue, because when we're talking about the Milwaukee situation where a police officer puts his knee on a man that's already, as I understand, I didn't follow this I followed it, but I wasn't involved extensively in the evidence of the case. But just for me as a taxpayer, when a police officer has his knee on the man's neck, I don't care what his criminal background is, he's already immobilized. He was handcuffed. He was on his, back or stomach, and people are saying he can't breathe. That to me is not justice.
It's not.
And so it makes the issue tough because the media will highlight that, and that officer, I don't even remember his name, put a stain on the rest of the great police officers that we have in this country.
Right.
So it is a tough issue. It's a tough balancing act. But I want the public to know that I think the judges in Harris County and the Commissioner's Court went way overboard, and the experiment, as talked about the MacArthur Foundation, ain't quite working well in Harris County.
Well, and I think too, historically, bail bondsmen, they've gotten a bad rap, right?
Yeah.
Because it looks like, these people are profiting off of somebody who's, down on their luck or committed a crime or made a bad choice. But the truth of the matter is, the bail bondsmen serve such a great role in the criminal justice system. We can't expect our government to do everything. And when we know that most people, whether they're wealthy or not, they don't put up their own bonds. So they call their dad or their boss or their sister or their family member, and they have a bondsman who's calling them, reminding them about court dates. They're offering to take these defendants to get their random drug test so they don't miss it and forfeit their bonds. And so, all these things behind the scenes that bail bondmen were doing to make this system work with PR bonds, we don't have any of that. And
Correct.
so we're removing the family and the community accountability that helped make this work.
Yeah, and the bail bond system in the state of Texas is the people's will. It was passed by the legislature in a democratic process, and that's what we, the people, say is a good system that holds criminal defendants accountable. And again, Harris County, through the Commissioner's Court, and these judges are tossing the will of the people out the window and just doing willy-nilly what they want to do. And so the spike in crime, folks, again, is not the pandemic. It is a complete obfuscation of the criminal justice system. We have any comments, Andrea?
We have comments from Liz Jory Burns. She said, no, they go before a clerk in the jail. The defendants don't go before the magistrate nor the judge. So, I mean,
yeah,
she
that's
agrees.
what we said.
Yeah.
And
she agrees, and this is unfortunately that we're seeing this happening, and Maryland, I'm coming from Colombia. I got in this country in 1997 and for better opportunities, and I always say this, I love this country because I feel safe. But these days, I mean, it's not that I'm gonna feel safer in my country, but it's so sad that we're running away from that, coming to this country because of not only better opportunities, but because you feel safe in this country. And now it's no longer the situation anymore. You go out and it's like, I mean, somebody's going to follow me. Now shootings in the highway just because somebody cut off somebody or just because I don't like you. And I just, everybody's shooting everybody. I don't understand what is going on.
I don't either.
Well, speaking of Colombia, it's, societies can devolve into a lawless society. You experienced that. The drug cartels became a lawless organization.
Yeah.
There were no consequences, right? For the cartels, when they started to fight each other, there were no consequences. But when they escalated that fight in Bogota and Cali, remember when Escobar was bombing buildings and killing innocent?
Yeah, I remember.
There were no consequences. In fact, they elected Escobar to the Colombian Congress, right?
Well,
at one time, and then, of course, he didn't serve long.
Yeah.
But that's an example of lawlessness run amok.
Right, and I was talking to one of the constables in my neighborhood, and he said that he was trying to arrest somebody the other day who had 5 pounds of marijuana. Right, that's not personal
recreational use.
right, it's not. And the DA's office wouldn't accept the charge.
Well, imagine that.
Why?
Because it was marijuana, and
marijuana is fine.
Right.
It's
well,
okay.
maybe the DA smoked some. I don't know.
Well,
she might have been high.
Well, so I told my husband this, and my husband said, "Man, well, my business isn't going really well. Maybe we should just become drug dealers." And he was being cheeky, of course, but I just, that is the mentality.
We are in the wrong business.
We're in the wrong business.
Well, and that's what happens because when crime pays, when crime is profitable, which it is in Harris County for criminal defendants, it's an industry. Remember, criminals are watching what counties they can get away and where they can make the biggest profit. And Harris County is developing the reputation of where you can get a huge haul. That means your property, and there are no consequences.
Yep.
So what we can do as a community, because it's
She
like,
meant, what can we do?
what can we do as a community? Yeah, that's a English lesson. Well, you were with us in the first show when he was also correcting me, but it's okay. What can we do as a community? Because as we said, I mean, we can do something here at the Texas Latino Conservative. You can do something, or the organizations with the women as the mothers that you were talking, but we need to really start like talking about what can we do to secure our families and secure our community and to not allow this situation.
I think it's that education piece that we were talking about. Educating our own circles and having them then educate their own circles, and and make it a ripple effect.
Well, and community involvement.
Absolutely.
Pastors in our community, I know, the church, the pastors in the African American community play a huge role. There's some great pastors that watch out for the community, and they want social justice as well, but they want their communities to be safe. And I mean, churches are now victims of crime. I mean, guys go in there and they steal all the copper out of the coils in their air conditioning system. There's no consequence. The congregation has to pay for it. And so parents, mothers, teachers, pastors, the entire community has to stand up and say, enough is enough. What is going on here? And that's the only way we're gonna get around it.
And something that I hear often, that why people are committing crimes and robbing, and because it's not jobs, and it's because of the pandemic. I'm tired of hearing that, because I'm seeing everywhere restaurants, and I have a lot of business owners that they're saying we cannot find employees. We cannot find people, don't want to work. So I think it's a domino effect, and this the situation that we're living with, the spiking of the crime, it goes deep with a different level, that people don't want to work, but they don't having enough money, but at the same time they don't want to work, so they go on and just like, oh, my kids are starving. Yeah, but why you don't go and apply for a job when a lot of restaurants are trying to hire people and they cannot find nobody to
Yeah,
work?
but it's just not waiters and staff at restaurants that don't want to work. The Democrats in the Texas legislature don't want to work. They're on vacation. I mean, we've got tax reform, we've got criminal justice reform, we got election integrity codes that we need to work on, and where are the Democrats? They too have taken off. They don't want to work.
private.
And in a private airplane without masks, and we're paying their salaries as taxpayers in the state of Texas, all in the name of voter suppression that the conservatives want to institute in Texas. Folks, we don't want to keep anybody from voting. We want everybody to vote. Let me repeat that. We want everybody in the state of Texas that is eligible to vote to vote. We have elections for weeks ahead of the election day. We have 12 hours a day. We have Saturday voting.
Even 24 hours places.
What we don't want is cheating. Because if Mary Nan and Andrea and I cast a vote, and a politiquera goes out and collects 5, fraudulent votes, that cancels our votes. That's not voter integrity. And so that's what we're fighting for. And where are the Democrats? They're vacationing in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
And taking pictures.
And taking pictures, yeah. And drinking light beer. Remember, they had their light beer on the aircraft.
Yeah.
Mary Nan, in the state legislature, when the Democrats decide to come back to work and maybe when their unemployment checks run out, what is the Texas legislature trying to do? What are the proposals now with respect to bail bonds? Are you familiar? Have you read some of the issues that they're trying to grapple with?
I have, and I think that one of the things that was discussed was, we have these PR bonds, and only the elected judge of the court, if somebody is on a felony bond and they commit another felony, only the elected judge of that court should be able to issue a PR bond, not a magistrate, not somebody else, because if the public is mad that this one judge is, this person's already on bond for a felony, your condition says don't commit any other crimes, then they do. If at some point that judge thinks, okay, maybe another PR bond is appropriate here, only the elected should be able to do that. That way the people can hold them accountable when it comes time for elections.
So let me understand this. The Democrats in Harris County, which most of the criminal felony courts are run by Democrats, as there are misdemeanors, don't want to work, so they turn over their responsibility on these hearings to the magistrates. And the legislature that is trying to reform bail bond, the Democrats don't want to work there, and they've taken off. So we're in bad shape.
Well, and now just another 2.5 million were approved to bring in appointed judges to take care of all this backlog from the pandemic, all these cases that are in the courts. And it'll be interesting to see what judges get appointed for that position.
Yeah.
Are they going to be judges that follow the penal code, that do justice, that individualize justice, or is it going to be more of this social justice agenda?
We can only hope for the former. Yeah.
So we
Comments?
have Santiago San Miguel Senior. He said, "Let's turn Harris County red." How do we do that?
Well, I think we have to educate people. I think people are understanding that there are consequences to elections. I mean, you stood for office. I got swept out. Folks, I'm sorry, but there is a difference between conservatives in the criminal justice system and out-of-control liberals, and you're seeing it. And the media is trying to cover up by telling you that it's the pandemic. It's not the pandemic. It's people being turned out like a freewheeling turnstile at the criminal justice system in Harris County, and those criminals that are accused of violent crimes and even nonviolent crimes are going out and committing mayhem in our community. It's that simple. There's no accountability. There's no consequences, and crime is profitable in Harris County, and those that are charged with enforcing our laws, whether it be prosecutors, police officers, constables, deputy sheriffs, troopers in the state of Texas, they're demoralized. They don't feel that they have their back covered by, our institutions, and therefore we can't recruit people. I mean, it's just it's a out of control situation that is spiraling into an even worse situation.
What is the feeling in the union? What is the feedback that they're giving you, these police officers, about what is going on, and they fear for their life, but they fear for the situation? And what is the feedback that you get from them?
I think that they are discouraged with the climate and what's happening right now. Nobody becomes a police officer because they make so much money,
Right.
or they want to miss every holiday, or they want to miss every birthday or anniversary. They do it because it is a calling and it's a passion, and it's something that they feel called to do. And we will have those people, that will continue to do that job, but it makes them want to, work less hard, or not put themselves in that situation.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I've never seen morale so low.
Yeah, so if you want to go back, you start working with them in 2018. We want to go back almost 3 years till now. How do you see the difference between, when they were working, as a police officer and wanted to do their job versus now?
Yeah, it's a big difference. I mean, it's night and day, really. We have police officers retiring at such a high rate that we've never seen before. And because of that, we can't get enough police officers, which I think contributes then to the low morale, that, we can't do our jobs because I need a backup unit and I can't get one here, and I have somebody firing at me from the street. So it's been a huge deal.
And let me ask you, is the leadership of the union, which has tremendous influence over the rank and file police officers, are they aware of the importance of treating everyone the same under the Constitution, that everyone has a Bill of Rights? I mean, I have to be fair to both sides, because we are all concerned about treating everybody fairly, and if that's the definition of social justice, that's fine. I agree with that. And I go back to a historic event that happened in Houston. Joe Campos Torres a veteran of the Vietnam era, a United States Army, came to Houston, got intoxicated in an East End bar. 4 Houston police officers handcuffed him, took him to Buffalo Bayou, and drowned the young man. Police officers got, I think, a 1-day probation and $1,000 fine, and it was swept under the carpet. The community still lives with that memory, Mary Nan. So what I'm asking you is, and I think the answer is yes, the police are aware of it. And the fact that we have diversified our police force so much that I don't know what the racial statistics are, but I think there's a huge number of African Americans, Hispanics, females, Muslims, people of various religions that are serving as peace officers in Houston. What do you know the numbers?
I don't know the numbers, but it is. I mean, it is a very diverse department with over 5,300 officers. But I think more importantly, the administration with HPD right now, the Chief of Police, Troy Finner, he would not put up with something like that. And so I think it starts at the top, and the culture and what officers, thought they could get away with back then. It starts with the leadership.
Well, and now that you mentioned the police chief, a big shout out to him. He grew up in the same community I did in Hiram Clark. I think he attended Madison High School as well. So while I didn't know him growing up, I'm proud that he is from Hiram Clark and our neighborhood back there. So I think he's done a great job. I think he's sincere. I think he really is a good public servant. And
he loves Houston.
He loves Houston. I think he's
I was
committed
gonna say
to
he's
his
coming
community.
from the community
Absolutely.
to serve his community.
Yeah,
It's different.
And the fact that people don't want to support a police chief like Finner, who is from Houston, who is passionate about I think Troy wants to defend everybody. I don't think it didn't make a difference to him. He's a public servant, and we ought to. And the fact that the left is out there defund these guys are horrible. That's just, to me, it's that in and of itself is horrible.
Yeah, we need to start the campaign defend, not defund.
Yeah, defend, don't defund.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
she said it before we went theater.
Oh,
like
that was
I
you?
love it. Yeah, she said it because she said I'm committed to defend, not to defund. So I love it. We need to run a campaign like that.
So what do we do, Mary Ann, to support our law enforcement officers in our communities? What can we do?
I think that we post on social media. We when we see them on the street, tell them thank you for doing this job. I mean, that alone, that little bit of, hey, we're behind you, it makes a huge difference. It really does. I
can't tell you how many restaurants I've been to, and I've seen citizens pick up the tab for police officers just as a sign of, hey, thanks for the job, well done. Absolutely. So, yeah, I agree. We need to support, those that put their lives on the line for us.
We need to invite a police officer here or the chief.
Well, we can do that. Why don't you reach out to
you know what? Yeah, you can help me.
Yes,
on
absolutely.
That.
Yeah, why don't we get the police chief on board and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Although he probably doesn't want to get as political as I do.
Well, I know. Yeah, probably,
so
but
it
will
back.
be. We can give it a try.
Yes.
Well, Mary Ann, last words of wisdom before we're running out of time. But again. I generally am optimistic. I think the public will react to this, and there will be a course of judgment. But how do you see the future with criminal justice in Harris County?
Well, I think that Harris County is one of the best places to be and live, and it's one of the friendliest places I've ever been, but our hospitality doesn't have to extend to people who commit violent crimes. And so let's show the criminals that enough is enough.
Okay. And so... Anyway, we're going to continue this talk about crime because it affects everybody. Everybody is affected by either personally or someone. Because, my heart breaks. I have friends that say, I went out to dinner the other day and somebody did a smash and grab out of my car.
I hear these stories every day, not only on the news, but with people that I know that, those cases not all the time go on the news. But I hear this every single day, so it's scary.
Yeah, and the inconvenience. I mean, to me, it's outrageous that if someone breaks a window in my car, steals my laptop, all my information, do you know how much time I have to dedicate? One, I have to repair the window, so I have to go to a glass company. I have to sit there for an hour and a half, 2 hours while they repair the window.
Yeah.
I have to gather all the data I had in my computer because now it's been stolen. Then I've got to sit down for 6 hours and call every credit card company in the bank to cancel my accounts, right? And apply for new ones. Then I've got to go, if I'm even inclined, go fill out a police report. So I'm going to spend days, time from work, days and hours trying to recover my life. And the criminal that perpetrated this crime against me is in and out in less than 4 hours on a free bond paid for by me, the taxpayer. Now tell me, where is the justice in that system? And that's what we're fighting against, folks. And that's why we're going to pick up this issue of crime in Harris County and in Texas, because our voters, our comunidad, needs to be informed as to why we have this spike in crime. And it's not because of the pandemic. So in the coming weeks, we're going to have more experts on a panel talking about how we change this criminal justice system to protect the law-abiding citizens of the state of Texas. Mary Nan, thanks for being our guest again. It's been a couple months since we've had you, but we'll bring you back. We always love the wisdom you share with us. Andrea?
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Muchas
thank you,
gracias.
thank you.
Yeah. ¿Y tu español cómo está? Is it getting better? No.
Poquito.
Yeah,
Sigue poquito.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, please go to our website, TexasLatinoConservatives.com, TexasLatinoConservatives.com. Become a member. It's only $35 a year, and help us to help us, to this show. This show, it cannot be possible without your help, without your contribution. And if you have a little bit more money to contribute, just support our cause.
And
Texas
more importantly, get involved. Go help a candidate. Go help a candidate that's running for judge. There are great folks that are running for judge that will protect you, your community, your property. And go out and learn which judges are giving free passes to criminals in Harris County, and make sure you vote them out. The next election is November 2022. This is your opportunity to speak to the Harris County Commissioner's Court and to the judges that are giving criminals free passes to go create mayhem in our community. We thank you for joining us. And as Andrea said, if you want to support us, it's TexasLatinoConservatives.com. We'll see you guys here next week. Again, thanks again, Mary Nan.
Thank you.
Nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Chao, chao.